Good morning. This lesson is for my Integrated 1 class, but before I get started, I want to say I hope that everybody's doing okay out there. We have 3 goals for today, and it's going to be a lengthy lesson. I apologize in advance. I know watching math is not exciting. It's probably, in fact, extremely boring. I apologize. But let's go ahead and talk about our 3 goals. Our first goal is going to be review, creating repeating numbers in the table, writing the equations, simplifying and verifying. Our second goal is we're going to create an equation and simplify when the x values are not consecutive. Now notice these are consecutive. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those go in order. That's what consecutive means. We're going to see how to write the equation when they're not consecutive. And our third goal is going to be create an equation when you know the change in the x and y values, which is what we call the slope and a point. So the second and third goal probably don't make much sense. But hopefully through this lesson I can get you guys to understand how we can get to these goals. And essentially it comes down to this. We're going to have to change this formula just a little bit to accomplish the last 2 goals. But hopefully I can show you how we have to change it and how it relates, and it ends up making some sense. So please make sure you're taking good notes on this. I'm going to try and be as articulate as I can. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So our first goal, I'm going to create the table with repeating numbers. So I'm going to rewrite this table again. Let's see here. With my x and my f of x. I go like this. And it's 1 and 18. Remember, the first row always stays the same. We don't have to change anything. Okay? It's from this point on is when we start to change things. So now I'm here on my second row. And so I'm just going to follow this. Oh, by the way, I need to find the common difference. I'm sorry. 18 turns into 25 by adding 7. 25 turns into 32 by adding 7. And 32 turns into 39 by adding 7. So we have a common difference. I can use our formula. I'm sorry, I haven't done this in a week. I took this vacation. All right, so we can now go through this. So I'm going to fill in the values. Okay? So it's going to be, my first y value is 18, so I'm going to put an 18 right here. And then I'm going to add my common difference, which is 7. And then I'm going to put a parenthesis, and I'm going to put the x value of this row. My x value of this row is 2, and that's going to force the numbers to repeat. And I'm going to add the opposite of the first x value. My first x value is 1, so the opposite of 1 is negative 1. Okay? Let's do this now for this row, the third row. And again, I'm going to follow this. So it's my first y value plus my common difference, parentheses, x value of that row, that's 3. That's forced these numbers to be repeating. And I'm going to add the opposite of the first x value. My first x value is 1, so the opposite is minus 1. Okay, and again, I need 1 7 to go from 18 to 25. I have 1. I need 2 7s to go from 18 to 32. I have 2. I just wrote 2 in a goofy way. Let's go ahead and write the next one. It's going to be 4. And it's 18 plus 7, parentheses, 4 minus 1. Right? I'm just filling in the values. My first y value, my common difference, the x value of that row, and the opposite value of my first x value. I'm going to now generalize this. Go dot, dot, dot. And I can now write this for the x row. And I get x, and then this will be 18 plus 7. My x value for this row is x. And my opposite of my first x value is minus 1. So now I can very quickly write my equation. So I've written it with repeating numbers. I'm going to write my equation now. It's really easy to do. I just set this equal to f of x. All right, and so remember we had the 6 steps of solving, and I'm going to use that to simplify. Right, my 6 steps of solving was, let's see here, Eliminate fractions, distribute, combine like terms, get all variables to one side, add or subtract away a number, divide away a number. But honestly, for this, I only need to use, and we'll see later on, steps 1, step 2, step 3, and step 6. But right now, it's really simple. I'm just going to distribute, combine like terms. That's all I need to do. So I'm going to distribute. So I get 18 plus 7 times x, that's 7x. And 7 times -1, that's -7. Okay, so I distributed. Now I'm going to combine like terms. 18 minus 7 is 11. So my equation is going to be f of x, my simplified equation is going to be f of x equals 7x plus 11. That is my simplified equation. Now, I want to point something out. This is going to be very important in the next couple days. And it's this value that we get when we simplify. This value right here. The number value. I want to point something out. If our table went backwards one more row, right? So this started at 1. If we got to the 0 row, this would be 11, right? Because if I'm going this way, I'm adding 7. So if I go the other way, I'm subtracting 7. This is the y value on the 0 row. Please write this down. Okay, this is going to be extremely important in the next couple lessons that we know what that number is. Okay, so I have my simplified equation. Now I'm going to verify. I like to plug in 2 and see if I get a 25. Okay, so I'm going to plug in a 2, and I'm going to see if I get a 25. So 7 and 2, that's 14. 14 and 11, that gives me 25. That means if I plug in 2, I got 25. We have a good equation. So I'm going to check off the first goal. Okay, and again, we just reviewed creating repeated numbers and tables, writing the equations, simplifying, and verifying. Excuse me. Hopefully this is making sense to you and you're feeling confident with it. I'm going to continue the lesson. I'm going to use only this table. We know what the equation is going to be for this table. We've already written it. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit pause so I can erase and set up for the second goal. But hopefully this is making sense. I'll be right back. I'm back. All right, so we're going to work on our second goal. And our second goal is to create an equation when the x values are not consecutive. So again, consecutive means we go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to write an equation when it's not consecutive. Now I also want to point out, I have the equation written that explains this table. So for example, if I was to do the following, and just erase that point, and erase, let's erase this point. The reason why I wanted to leave this equation up here for this table is that equation describes this table. Now if I eliminate some information, it's still going to describe this table. If I plug in a 3, I'll get a 32. If I plug in a 1, I'll get an 18. Okay? So that equation is still good for this table. So I want to go through, and I'm gonna kind of skip some steps here. I'm going to just go to the writing the equation part here. Okay? So let's see here. I know that I can go from 18 to 32 by adding 14. This is plus 14. Okay, so we're going to call that our common difference. Let me make that a better plus sign. So to go from 18 to 32, that's my common difference. And so what we're going to get for an equation is going to look like this. It's going to look like, let's see here. F of x equals my first y value, 18, plus my common difference, which is now 14, and then the x value would have been x, right? And then opposite the first x value, that would be minus 1. Now, I'm going to check off the numbers that are the same. 18 and 18, those are the same, right? That's good. In this equation, the common difference is 7. This equation, the common difference is 14. That's not good. That's a problem. Because if they're different, you're going to get a different answer. Now, everything else is the same. This is good and this is good. But the 14, it can't be a 14. It's a different number. And if it's a different number, it's going to not describe our table. But let me talk about why it's not consecutive, the importance of this. So to go from 18 to 32, it took me 14. To go from 1 to 3, it's going to take me 2. So if you think about how can I make the value of 7 now using these numbers, 14 and 2, hopefully you recognize very quickly that if we were in fact, now I'm going to write it like this, 14 over 2, we're not only talking about the change in the y value, but we're talking about the change in the x value. And we never had to talk about the change in the x value because it was always 1. It always divided away nicely. But here it's not consecutive. So now we are going to change our formula. Okay, so it's not the common difference anymore. Okay, we're not going to call it the common difference. And where did I have? Oh, there's my racing machine. We're not going to call it the common difference anymore. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to call it plus change in y over change in x. Okay? And if we do the change in y over the change in x, this now becomes f of x equal to 18, 14 divided by 2, that's 7, and then x minus 1. And you can now see that these guys are exactly the same. And they're going to be exactly the same now because we had to modify this. And so we can even modify this a little bit further. All right, and so this is going to be our formula to write the equation of any 2 points. Remember, these are ordered pairs. So the first y value plus the change in y over the change in x, parentheses, x plus the opposite of the first x value, and that's equal to f of x. This is our formula that we've been working towards. This is what we've been trying to build. Okay? So, for example, if I gave you, I'm going to erase all of this. If I gave you the following points, if I gave you 5, 7, and, I'm going to do a little quick math in my head. 8, 16. If I gave you these 2 points, you can put them into a table. You know your first x value, you know your first y value. You can find your change in y. So 7 turns into 16 by adding 9. 5 turns into 8 by adding 3. Okay, and now we have enough information to write our equation. So f of x, so I didn't mean to erase that. F of x equals the first y value, so f of x equals the first y value, so that's 7, plus my change in y, which is 9, divided by my change in x, that's 3, so plus 9 over 3, parentheses, always an x now, and then plus the opposite of the first x value, so that's plus 5, so it's going to be minus 5. All right, so now let's simplify this. We're going to get f of x equals to 7 plus, this is 3, now it's x minus 5, and we can now pass this out, and I get 7 plus 3x minus 15. Remember, 3 times x is 3x, 3 times minus 5 is minus 15. 8 minus 15 is going to be minus 8. I'm sorry, 7 minus 15 is minus 8. And I get f of x is equal to 3x minus 8. Now, again, I want to point out, and I really want to stress, that this is the y value at x equals 0. Okay? It's very important that we know that. Very important for a future lesson. Let me make sure that's in the picture. Okay, it's in the picture. All right. So I'm going to check off this goal now. Let me get a walk through it. Before I check it off, I want to walk through it and explain again what I did. So we now can write equations for tables when the numbers aren't consecutive. And we had to change the common difference into the change in y divided by the change in x. Okay? And so now I just plug in these numbers into this formula, simplify it, and I now create equations. And in fact, if I tell you just two random ordered pairs, you can write it as a table, find the change in y, find the change in x, use your first x or your first y. You would even get the exact same equation if you wrote the table with 8, 16 on the top and then 5, 7 on the bottom. You would get the exact same answer. So hopefully this is making sense. Now I'm going to check off the second goal. And I got one more goal. But guess what? We already know how to do the third goal, and I will explain. So let me erase this. I'll get ready for the third goal, and I'll be right back. I'm back. All right, so this is the third goal in our lesson. And our third goal is going to be to create an equation when you know the change in x and y values, which is what we call the slope and a point. So let me first start off by explaining what slope is. Slope can be thought as slope can be equal to the change in y divided by the change in x. And instead of saying slope, I could also say m. That's what slope is. All right, so right here I'm telling you that m, which is slope, m is equal to 10. So I know that 10 is my change in y and 2 is my change in x. So we know, if I tell you that my slope is 10 over 2, we know if I have whatever numbers are in there, I can go from the first number, first y value to the second y value by adding 10, and I can go to from the first x value to the second x value by adding 2. So this is how I'm going to disguise these numbers in some problems. I'm going to tell you what they are, you just have to know where to put them. Alright? So, if I wanted to write the equation knowing the slope, or the change in y or the change in x, and I wanted it to go through a point, which is this goal, where I create an equation when you know the slope and the point. Well, this is really easy to do, because we know all the numbers we need to plug in. Right? So that's my first x value. That's my first y value. And all I have to do now is just plug in things where they belong. So I'm going to get f of x is equal to my first y value, which is 7, plus my change in y divided by my change in x, which is slope, which is 10 over 2. And then we're going to put an x, and then I'm going to do the opposite of my first x value. My first x value is minus 3. So the opposite is plus 3. Okay? So let's see here. 10 over 2, that turns into 5. So I get 7 plus 5, x plus 3. I distribute, and now I get 7 plus 5x plus 15. And then I add these guys together, and I get f of x equals 5x plus 22. And again, I want to stress that 22 is a y value when x is 0, right? So when x is 0, y is going to equal 22. I'm going to keep stressing that. That's a really important fact. Hopefully this is making sense and it's getting to be a lot easier for you. So we really only need to know 4 numbers, right? And in this problem, I told you these numbers and I told you those numbers. In the previous problem, I just told you these 2 numbers and you had to figure these out. So again, every problem that we're working on can be answered with this formula. You just have to figure out the first y value, the change in y, the change in x, and the opposite of the first x value, and you can write your equation. So hopefully this is making sense to you guys, and it's going to be pretty easy for you. That's going to end this lesson for today. So I hope everyone's doing all right out there. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.